Woodburners, welcome back to the Old Soul Millennial channel. Question of the day: does firewood dry and season faster when stacked bark side up or bark side down? To further complicate that question, does it make a difference whether the stack of wood is covered or uncovered? Well, I plan to test just that in today's video. How am I going to test it? Well, I have two stacks of wood that we're going to draw a few pieces from. Each stack of wood, we're going to draw 4 pieces. Those pieces are going to be approximately the same size, 2 of which will be bark side up and 2 of which will be bark side down. And all those pieces, I'm going to try and ensure that they're at the same level and same sun exposure on each individual stack. Now, before we get into my thoughts and predictions and what I've done in the past, I want to thank you all for watching this video. My previous wood testing videos have done extremely well on the YouTube platform, so I'd like to ask you, are there any other tests you would like to see? Any other questions you've had about firewood that have not been answered? I'd be happy to test them. Again, thank you for watching. Anyway, what have I done in the past? Well, in the past, I've pretty much always covered my wood stack, with the exception of the few piles that are out there right now, which we're going to be testing from. But I believe that if you cover your stack of wood, I don't think it makes a real big difference whether it's bark side up or bark side down. Personally, I've never really done it one way or the other. However, when we think about an uncovered stack of wood, I think it will make a pretty significant difference. When I think of bark, I think of it as kind of like a natural shield, a natural tarp for the piece of wood. So if I were to have an uncovered pile of wood, I would think that leaving the bark side up would allow the wood to dry and season faster, because the bark, at least in my eyes, acts like a natural tarp, right? So if water sinks down into the pile, the bark will hopefully shed water off to either side of the split piece of wood. So those are my thoughts, experiences, and predictions. So let's go outside and test it with this moisture meter. Again, each piece that we test, I will label each piece, have an arrow face up or face down, and then we're going to split each piece and probe it internally to ensure we get an accurate moisture percentage reading. So let's go outside. I'd quickly like to go over my whiteboard as well and how I plan to lay out this information. So obviously I have this divided between the covered stack and uncovered stack. First 2 pieces are going to be bark up, labeled C1 and C2, right? Covered piece 1 and covered piece 2. Pieces 3 and 4, bark down, covered 3, C3, and C4. Obviously the uncovered stack of wood side, again, the first 2 pieces, bark up, so that's going to be UC uncovered 1 and UC2. And then finally, pieces 3 and 4, bark down, UC3 and UC4. So this is the covered stack of wood I'm going to draw from. Just a single stack of wood, ash. It's been here for maybe 1.5 years, 2 years. This is a Vevor firewood rack. And what's interesting, the cover folds down and sits about halfway on this stack. So I'm going to draw a bark up piece from the top and bottom, and then a bark down piece from the top and the bottom. Let me mark those, and then I'll show you on the camera before I pull them out of the stack. C1, bark up on the upper half of the pile. C2, bark up on the lower half of the pile. C3, bark down on the upper half of the pile. And finally, C4, bark down on the lower half of the pile. Now let's try and pull these pieces out of here without destroying the stack. Pulled my 4 pieces out of there without destroying the stack. It was like a big game of Jenga. Piece C2, bark side up. The bark came off while I was pulling the piece out. I don't think it's going to make any difference, but I just wanted to show you that I have all 4 pieces, so let's go over to the splitter. It is time to start splitting. I have my moisture meter set to metering material 3, which covers oak and ash. We will start with piece C1. 19.2. Here we have piece C2. Again, the bark came off this piece as I was pulling it out of the stack. We're still going to split it right down the middle. .6. Piece C3, bark side down. .8. And finally, piece C4, bark side down. we'll say 18%. So quickly going over the data we got from the covered stack, I would say this is about what I expected. It really didn't make a difference whether the bark was up. You know, for the bark up, we got 19.2 and then 14.6. Then for the bark down, we got a piece that was 14.8 and then a piece that was 18%. So, you know, there's a ton of variables, but from this test, I can kind of conclude that it really doesn't make a difference, because at the end of the day, that tarp on the top of the wood is doing the real job. You know, that's shedding the water off the pile. Some argue that that holds moisture in. I suppose if you droop it down on the sides of the stack and don't allow any airflow, but you know, there was a decent amount of airflow going through that stack. And additionally, I tried to take some pieces from the top, which was a little bit more covered with the tarp, and pieces from the bottom, which had much more airflow. So yeah, for the covered stack, doesn't really seem to make a difference. So here's the uncovered stack of wood we're going to be drawing from. We're going to be drawing from the lower half. The lower half of this pile is oak, and it's been here for about 1.5 to 2 years. I think the real test is going to be from piece UC uncovered 1 and UC 3. Now take a look at UC 1, bark side up, right? Look at that bark. You would think that if any water got down into the pile, that water would just shed off the bark and not be held within the internal structure of the wood. But I mean, if you look at piece UC3, bark side down, it almost seems damper down here, which would make sense, because if water does make it down here, which it probably would, I mean, there's kind of like a collection gap, right? Like there's a little gap right here where one would think water could potentially get in here, go down, and then just kind of be stuck here, right? In between the bark and the main mass of the wood. So I'm thinking we're going to see some results here. I'm thinking UC3 is going to be significantly wetter in terms of moisture percentage compared to piece UC1. But anyway, there's piece UC1, bark side up. UC2, much smaller piece, bark side up. Piece UC3, bark side down. Again, this matches the size of piece UC1. And then finally, UC4, bark side down, and this matches the size of piece 2. Now the challenge of trying to pull these pieces out of here without toppling over my stack. Alright, now time for the real test, the uncovered stack of wood. We'll start with UC1, so this is bark side up. And again, I'm predicting that the bark side up pieces on the uncovered stack are going to be drier than the bark side down pieces. 29.4. Bark side up piece number 2. This piece is significantly smaller. 24%. Piece UC number 3, bark side down. And this is the one that I predict is going to be significantly more wet than UC1. So let's probe around this piece a little bit. So if I go towards the top of the piece, remember bark side is down, getting pretty high moisture readings. This will say 38. We'll say 38. If I go towards the bottom, close to where the bark sits directly against the piece of wood, you know, I'll go up a ½ inch. It's actually a little bit lower, 32%. Which I would have thought at the bottom, down here, that's where the moisture percentage would have been highest, when in fact, it seems to be on the top of the wood, which it is what it is. I guess we'll probe right in the middle, and that'll give us our average. 35.6%. And then our final piece, UC4, bark side down. This is the smaller piece So the other smaller piece that was bark side up was reading at 24% moisture. So we'll see where this one lands. I'm predicting it's going to be a little bit higher, maybe around 30. 27.5. So a little bit higher. So the question we were trying to answer in the beginning of this video, does it make a difference whether you have your pieces of wood bark side up or bark side down? Well, let's go over the covered stack first. You know, we have bark up piece C1, bark up piece C2, bark down piece C3, and bark down piece C4. 19.2, 14.6 for the bark up pieces, and then the bark down pieces 14.8 and 18%. So the moisture did vary a bit, but there was no correlation really between bark up or bark down. It was kind of luck of the draw. So my initial prediction was pretty much correct in the beginning of this video. If you cover your stack of wood, it really doesn't make a difference whether the bark side is up or bark side is down. Now where things get interesting is when we start talking about our test results from the uncovered stack of wood. So I drew these arrows as a correlation between the sizes of the pieces I was testing, right? So piece UC1 and UC3, bark up and bark down, they were about the same size. So with the bark up piece, UC1, we had a moisture percentage of 29.4%. That's bark up. Now if we go to the same size piece, bark side down, UC3, a higher moisture percentage reading, 35.6% moisture. So from this result, it tells us, yes, it does matter. You should keep your wood bark side up. But for the second test here, these two pieces were smaller. We have bark up piece UC2 and bark down piece UC4. So the bark up piece, again, the moisture percentage was lower, 24%, and the bark down piece was 27.5, which is pretty much what I predicted in the beginning of this video. There you have it. Uncovered stack of wood, yes, it does matter. Covered stack, no, it doesn't matter at all. So I would like to thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any future video suggestions, anything you want me to test with firewood. Please drop a comment down below. Anyway, I have to get back to work. I gotta put that stack of wood back together for the second time now. So thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.